Good morning, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be re-reviewing The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD for the Wii U, this time with video footage. Usually when I review a game that is an improvement over an existing game, I like to talk about the changes, just in case you've played the original and are wondering if you should double dip. One of the most obvious improvements is that this game is now in HD. I mean, it's in the title, it's pretty obvious. The graphic style hasn't received a great overhaul, but some of the lighting has been improved, the overall fidelity is much better, so it looks less blurry, but more importantly, most of the textures have been redone so that they look much more visually appealing, especially the bricks and floors. Like, they look much shinier. You also have the gamepad that utilizes a few handy features, not exactly revolutionary, but they do make the game flow a lot better, such as being able to switch your items by just dragging your finger along the gamepad screen without needing to pause the game, although you still have that option just in case you're in a bind. You can also display the map on the gamepad so that you don't have to keep looking at the screen. And the map generally is a lot more helpful in this game, as it includes a flagpole that shows where your next objective is, it shows how many Poe souls are left in the province, as well as marks locations of horsegrass and side quests. The gamepad also has motion sensing, so that if you're aiming a projectile weapon, you can move the gamepad around to do that, and I found that this was pretty convenient. Near the end of the game, I mixed and matched using traditional stick controls with the gamepad, because it seemed like it just could not get me the right angle that I needed. But overall, the motion sensing worked well for about 98% of the game. You also have the option to play with a Pro controller, or even to play the entire game on the gamepad. I do not recommend this, as most of the time it was pretty smooth, but there would be certain sections, especially near the end of the game, that would chug like crazy, and seemingly for no reason either. Like, not a lot was happening on the screen. The final battle was absolutely ruined for me. It was one of my favorite moments in Twilight Princess, and it chugged so much that I felt like I was playing Hyrule Warriors Legends on the old 3DS model, and I tried to get the battle over even quicker than I normally did. Sometimes I like to prolong that battle because it's just so much fun. There's also a few quality of life improvements besides the obvious system specs. Amiibos are supported. Once a day, you can scan the Link or Toon Link amiibos to refill your arrows, and you can also scan the Zelda and Sheik amiibos once a day to refill your hearts. I didn't find these features necessary in the main game, as you're pretty much always being given hearts and arrows unless you're playing on hero mode, which we'll get to that. If you have the Ganondorf amiibo, however, you can also scan that once a day to make you take double damage, and to signify it, your hearts turn purple. But then if you're playing on hero mode, you take double the damage when you already take double damage. But if you have the special Wolf Link and Midna amiibo, then you can unlock a special dungeon called the Cave of Shadows, which is basically an enemy gauntlet, but you have to stay as Wolf Link the entire time. Now, I had mixed feelings on this. On one hand, it's an entirely new dungeon, that's cool. But Twilight Princess already has a mini dungeon called the Cave of Ordeals, which is also an enemy gauntlet, but you get to switch forms. So this is basically another one. Now, to soften the blow a little bit, there are checkpoints where you can scan your data onto the amiibo and then use that in Breath of the Wild to increase Wolf Link's hearts. But the reward for going through the entire thing is pretty darn underwhelming. So it's a neat bonus if you have the amiibo, but you otherwise cannot access it without it. But then again, if you don't have the amiibo, you're not missing much. You can switch between normal and hero mode, normal mode basically being the GameCube version, and hero mode being the weird everything is mirrored Wii version, as well as making you take double damage and not being able to find hearts, except for one specific scene that I won't spoil. So you have to rely on stuff like fairies and potions and heart pieces to refill your energy. There's also 2 new items, and I say that with parentheses, because you can find an item called the Ghost Lantern that helps you track down if there's a Poe in the general vicinity. It doesn't tell you exactly where the Poe is. It's not like the Korok mask where it like shakes when you're near one. And if it happens to be during the daytime, there is no way to cause the time to switch rapidly, like, say, the Song of Double Time in Majora's Mask. So you kind of have to do a lot of waiting around if you're going to 100% the Poe quest. Then there's the Miiverse stamps. In the original Twilight Princess, there were quite a lot of chests that contained rupees, but if your wallet was full, you would just put them back in the chest. That has been removed in favor of your wallets being bigger, but still, just in case you still have an influx of rupees, now you can open up the chests to receive Miiverse stamps that are based on various things within the Twilight Princess universe. They can be fun to look at, but now that Miiverse has been discontinued, there's really no reason to get them. So it actually fills me with disappointment when I go out of my way to find a chest, only to find that I have a pointless reward inside of it based on an outdated system. There are also a few quality of life touch-ups, but most of them aren't really worthy of talking about here. So let's move on to the main game. If I could summarize Twilight Princess in one word, it would be epic. There are so many moments in Twilight Princess where you just feel really powerful, and the items offer some of the coolest moments in the entire Zelda franchise. However, one of the biggest problems with this system is that it takes too long to get to those moments. When I was capturing footage for this review, I kept groaning and sighing the whole time because the tutorial section drags on too much and is really slow and boring. When I first played Twilight Princess, I had no problems with this tutorial section as, one, I had a time limit back then, so perhaps it was easier to digest, and two, I thought that it did a good job of setting up Link's daily life in juxtaposition to what it's like in Hyrule, where things are much more demanding. Nowadays, though, you kind of just want to get to the action, and if you're trying to capture footage that doesn't spoil things, it really makes it hard to make sure that you're not over-relying on, oh, let's show the audience me collecting a bunch of rupees. I bet they'll love that. Twilight Princess also isn't a very revolutionary Zelda game, but that's totally okay, because it's basically Ocarina of Time, but perfected. Moving Link around is such a joy. The gamepad controls feel very, very smooth, and even though you can use a Pro Controller, I have not tested that, although I imagine you wouldn't want to because you'd have to pause the game more often. Overall, the camera controls, while not spectacular, they get the job done, and I prefer that over the Wii version not having any camera controls at all. And even the little things add up, like the way that Link's hair will gradually dry after he gets wet, or the way that he holds his lantern. And it's one of those things where you kind of have to experience the world of Twilight Princess to really appreciate how Nintendo tried to make every little action add up to make this world feel believable and realistic, even if looking back on this compared to Breath of the Wild, it seems like there's a lot of corridors and a lot of walls blocking your progress, and you kind of feel like you're cramped a lot of the times. This game also has fantastic dungeon designs with amazing items that, again, give you some really cool moments, especially during the boss battles. Most of the time the game is really easy, but it's also fun at the same time, so it's like a good kind of easy. One problem with the items is that most of them are really underutilized. Like, you'll get them in the main dungeon and use them a lot, but then after that you'll use them in very sporadic situational moments, if you use them at all. And I feel like they definitely could have been used more to their full potential outside of side quests. Twilight Princess also has by far the best character in the whole Zelda series, being Midna. She starts out kind of annoying, but she quickly gets much, much better. On the flip side of Midna, Link turns into a wolf every time he enters a Twilight Realm, which is basically an area that he will explore, albeit with a different art style. And when you're a wolf, your basic combat functions are similar, but you also have Midna as your ally that helps you perform these really cool moves. I'm pretty mixed on the wolf sections. On one hand, there are some really cool maneuvers that you can do, such as toggling Link's senses mode, where he can see things that wouldn't normally be seen by the naked eye, especially if you find an object that has a scent, and then you can follow the scent line around. That blew my mind when I first played this game. Or you can dig things up, and then with Midna you get even cooler moves, such as being able to leap across gaps, and being able to sweep enemies in a force field to quickly take them out like ninja style. On the other hand, most of the wolf sections require you to find what's called Tears of Light, and you'll find them by searching for shadow bugs that after you defeat, they'll drop a light. Now, the Wii U version has dropped each section's amount of shadow bugs from 16 down to 12, so it's slightly less of a chore, but it still feels like an annoying fetch quest. Admittedly, as the years go along, I appreciate these quests more and more, as you get a familiar feel of the landscape before you restore it to light, and then you get to explore it as human Link. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a preview in a limited state so that you can get your full arsenal back. So being with Midna is cool. She offers you amazing abilities, and she just keeps getting more as the game progresses. But on the other hand, it just doesn't feel as good to play as a wolf compared to regular Link, who has all of these cool abilities. That being said, I do think that Wolf Link's animations were handled brilliantly. He really does feel like an actual wolf, down to the way he shakes his fur, and the way that he digs, and the sound effects. Everything just adds up to provide a really immersive experience. And I really like the little touches that Midna will sometimes yawn and slap you to tell you to get a move on if you're not being engaging enough. So overall, Twilight Princess is a wonderful game, if you don't play it on the gamepad. I mean, admittedly, most of the time it works, but when it doesn't work, it feels like you are chugging through molasses. If you play it on the TV, though, it's a really smooth experience. Compared to Breath of the Wild, some people may find it to be a very limiting experience. But I still think that if you keep your expectations in check and realize that that's how Zelda games were before Breath of the Wild, then you're in for a really epic time. This is still my second favorite Zelda game, and it's still a blast to revisit once I get past that annoying tutorial section. And I highly recommend it. Now, would I call the Wii U version the definitive way to play it? Just barely. I do really like the quality of life improvements and the enhanced graphics, especially the camera controls, but I also think that if you play this on the GameCube, it's still a perfectly serviceable way to play the game. It's not by any means a broken experience, and the quality of life improvements don't make the GameCube version obsolete. I would highly recommend staying away from the Wii version, as that version shoehorned in motion controls and felt like it was a rushed product, but either way, you're in for a wonderful time if you get it with a traditional control scheme. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Let me know down in the comment section if you have any questions or comments, or if I missed anything. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye!